A couple of months ago, I was playing with this little guy, see the video above in the card, and got to thinking, a dangerous pastime, I know. What series or character would Nintendo honor next with a Game & Watch machine? Mario? Zelda? Then what? Metroid? Maybe. But what about a character or series that Nintendo would never even consider making one of these devices to honor? Now, that line of thinking was way more interesting. There was only ever really one choice. The man himself, who didn't even make it into Smash Bros., Waluigi. So I designed his special edition Game & Watch. Design of things 36. Designing the Waluigi Game & Watch. Designing this thing was a trip, a lot of fun, and an awesome learning experience as well. To do it well, I had to learn a lot of skills and get a lot of feedback from others. It really followed an iterative design process. So here we go. I'll walk you through the process, from the selection of colors, to the creation of the 3D model in Shaper 3D, to UV mapping in Blender, to painting in Procreate. Let's go. 1. Research and investigation. With an idea in mind, I felt I had to get to know my client, as I'll call him, better, to do him justice. So I went back to 2000 to learn. Waluigi was introduced in Mario Tennis for the Nintendo 64 and a couple months later for the Game Boy Color. Waluigi was created by Fumihide Aoki as a doubles partner for Wario and a foil for Luigi. Here's his entrance in the Nintendo 64 version, and here's some gameplay in the Game Boy Color version. He was voiced by the legendary Charles Martinet, voice of Mario. Tennis is a central part of his character. Learning these things, I also took note of his color palette, but we'll get into that later. 2. The 3D model. Next, I started working on the 3D model. I had already created a rough model of the Zelda Game & Watch for that episode, so I used that one as a base, removing the Triforce on the back. This worked initially, but the model was really rough, not proportioned correctly, really just eyeballed, and I wanted to get this right. So I studied and measured the Zelda Game & Watch and started a new model in Shaper 3D. While working on the model, I learned a lot about the detail and care that goes into designing consumer devices. For example, there's not a sharp corner on the device. There are small fillets on every edge. One of the more challenging parts of designing the model was the text on the rear regulatory label. I needed to extrude this from the model. First though, I had to find the font. Thanks to R Identify This Font for finding Myriad Pro. Then I carefully matched the weight, leading, and tracking of the letters to the real example. Also, all these regulatory symbols on the bottom. In order to recreate this, I had to first find out what each was called, then find the government-provided SVG files, which was a nightmare. As we know, government websites are really such a joy to navigate. Australia, Korea, Japan, UK, Russia, the EU, they're all here, all requiring us to slap an unruly mishmash of symbols all over our electronics devices. Anyways, I created a DXF file, a vector drawing file type used in CAD programs, and imported that to Shaper 3D. With that in hand, I could extrude the text like this. This is probably one of the only times I've pushed the indomitable iPad Pro beyond its limits. That's really complex geometry, and it really brought the iPad to its knees. Thankfully, I was able to transfer it to my computer to make the final edits. One final note here is that I separated the parts of the device into different objects, as this would make coloring easy in the next step. 3. The color scheme. Now it was time to think of the color. I mocked up a couple of color combinations in the CAD software. Here's where I'd like to stress the importance of getting feedback when you design something, especially if, like me, you're not a professional experienced designer. This was my original idea. Some friends instantly pointed out that while Waluigi does have these colors, the balance is off. His overalls, this dark slate, is really the main color, with the bright purple of his shirt and the yellow just accenting it. So I took the feedback and arrived at this. I feel that this really captures the essence of Waluigi, so I decided to run with it. Before painting the model in this color scheme, I needed to UV unwrap it. Think of taking a 3D object and unfolding it, like this. If we don't do this, and just import our 3D object to Procreate, which we'll use to paint the model, we get this horrible result. So we need to go to Blender to unwrap it. There are two ways this can go down. One, be lazy and do it automatically, but regret it later. Or two, specify all the seams manually to ensure a good result. Don't do what I did. I made the bad choice. As I reasoned due to the complexity of the text on the back and the thought of unwrapping all that, I just decided to go for the fast route. I did use a UV packing Blender plugin to help organize everything though. Once done, I exported it as an OBJ file. And finally, we're ready to go. A nice 3D model that's ready to paint. For Procreate and the 3D painting. This was a great learning process. Procreate had just received its 3D painting update when I started this, so it was a completely new process for me. In preparation for this, I created mockups in vector design software to get the colors right and the alignment of all the labels and text. These could then be pasted onto the model roughly. A lot of touch-ups were needed, but eventually it was colored. It was now time to apply the material characteristics. We have roughness and metallic that we can work with here. White equals yes and black equals no. So if we want to make it rough and metallic, we paint both white. Black equals smooth and not metallic. Add in a brushed metal texture and some texture for the plastic, and we are good and in business. Let's play around with the environment and lighting. And oh yeah, it's looking good. Here is the final product. I love how it turned out. I'm working on some pixel art for the clock, but that's not finished yet. Here we have some screenshots of Waluigi from his original appearances. Not that Nintendo would ever make this, or ever be able to put Nintendo 64 games on a Game & Watch. But we can dream, can't we? Hats off to Waluigi for inspiring this fun project. Until next time on Design of Things.